So with the first two practice sessions out of the way before this weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix, which team and which driver is looking like they're going to grab pole? And for the first time ever, I'm going to give my predictions, or rather guesses, for the top 5 positions in qualifying. So which cars are looking predictable, fast and drivable, and which are looking like, well, a bit of a nightmare. And of course we have the typical caveats from free practice. We don't know how much fuel each car is running, and we don't know what engine modes they're in. But I think while the teams are trying to capture so much data, they would at least like to try and have something fairly close to the conditions that we would have in qualifying tomorrow. So let's get into it, and I'm not going to go over each and every team, just the ones that I think are at the top, and also the teams that stand out. So first of all, let's get into Mercedes. As you may know, they're not actually looking like they're too fast in outright pace. And to be honest, the Mercedes looks like it's a bit of a pain to drive. It's porpoising, locking the front tyres, it's understeering on the entry to the corners, it's oversteering on the exits, and more importantly, it's looking like a challenge for Lewis Hamilton and George Russell to keep going quickly. Now, we just don't know where the problem is for the Mercedes. It could be a fundamental issue with the design philosophy of the car. So I think that the Mercedes package is the 3rd quickest team in quali trim, and probably the 3rd or 4th quickest over the race stints. However, it is worth mentioning, and as we've all seen over the previous years, that Mercedes do have a habit of putting things together very quickly indeed, even over a race weekend. Russell actually ended up free practice 2 quicker than Hamilton, P4 versus P9, but Hamilton didn't have a clear run. It's clear that these two drivers are 2 of the very best on the grid, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Russell develops himself over the year to try and match Hamilton. So next, on to Ferrari, and they have been absolutely consistent right out of the box, and the car looks fast too. The car looks nice to drive. It's balanced, meaning that the difference between the grip at the front of the car and the rear of the car is minimal. And in particular, this Ferrari, at least in comparison to the other cars, looks really good in the slower corners. It's also worth mentioning that the Ferrari engine now looks like it's at least matching the Red Bull and the Mercedes units. I really enjoy watching Leclerc and Sainz drive. Their driving style is absolutely fantastic to watch, and it's going to be great to watch these two battle throughout the season. And finally, I think the Red Bull, at least in the hands of Verstappen, is a little bit quicker than the Ferrari. From the onboards, the car looks really good. It's behaving properly as you would want as a driver. It looks balanced, it's predictable, and it's really good in the quick corners, as you might come to expect from an Adrian Newey designed car. The only problem is that unfortunately Perez doesn't look quite as comfortable in the car as Verstappen. I really hope that we're not going to see him struggle to support his teammate again in 2022, as I really like Perez as a driver. And the other team to note from free practice 2 in P8 and P10, with both drivers doing a great job, was Haas. As we know, they had more development time with this car, working throughout the 2021 season to make this car as fast as possible. Worth noting is super sub Nico Hülkenberg, who was only a 1/10 of a second from his teammate Stroll. Not bad considering he only arrived in the early hours of this morning. So what are my actual predictions for tomorrow's qualifying session? Well, first of all, just pause this video and comment your top 5 below. Okay, so on to my guesses. First of all, P5, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. When that car's been running, it's actually been really fast, and I rate K-Mag as a really great aggressive driver, so I'd love to see him in the top 5. P4 is Pierre Gasly. Now, although they weren't particularly fast in free practice 2, they have shown glimmers of hope over the free practices and the testing beforehand. So I'm going to put Pierre Gasly as P4. P3 goes to the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. As we've just mentioned, the Ferrari's been really quick, and Leclerc is a great driver. P2, the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. He seems to have a bit of momentum behind Leclerc, and actually surprised me a lot with his performance last year. So I think he might actually outperform Charles. And finally, on to P1, and probably, quite predictably, it's a Red Bull of Max Verstappen. The car just looks absolutely nailed to the track, looks like an absolute pleasure to drive, and as we all know, Verstappen is a great driver. So there's my top 5. Make sure you comment your top 5 below, and let's see how we get on tomorrow. Either way, it's going to be really interesting to watch, and make sure you subscribe to the channel because we're going to be doing a race review on Monday morning.